So we've started this series on perspective, and I don't know if you got to hear last week on Zacchaeus, but if you didn't, it's definitely available online through our podcast or through the videos, and I encourage you to listen. It was a great message on the story of Zacchaeus, the wee little man that wanted to see Jesus, and how that, his perspective of what Jesus was deeply changed when Jesus called him down and said, "Look, I'm going to your house today," and his life was changed. Perspective is one of those things that we think sometimes that it's easy to change, but sometimes it's really not. And we had a funny little thing happen to us the other day, and Alan had the privilege of marrying Daniel and Samantha a week ago Saturday. So he and I got there early at the venue that they were married at, a beautiful place in Round Rock that was located right there. What I heard a little boy tell me was that it's the San Marcos River. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to take his word on it that it was the San Marcos River. So we were standing there, and I told Alan, we look pretty good today. We should take a picture. So I don't know if you've ever seen us take selfies, but we've decided we don't have long enough arms. Because Alan always goes, "I look like a giant in this picture," and he's like, "You get in front of me," and we end up laughing. It's really kind of a funny thing. So we take this picture, and I take my camera back from him, and I'm like, "These are terrible. Why didn't you tell me I look this bad?" He goes, "What? You look fine." I'm like, "No, look at those wrinkles, and what's going on with this?" And so I decided one of three things. Either one, my camera's broke, my phone, and it just doesn't work. Two, my mirror lies to me every morning. Or my perspective about myself is a little off. Because in my mind, I'm 28 years old. I feel it every day. But the truth of the matter is that the camera is not lying. And there's a few more years added onto that 28. And the thing of it is that in my perspective is that I don't feel the age I am. I feel happy, and I feel joyful, and I feel blessed, and I don't feel like my life is missing anything. But unfortunately, I can't change the fact that, I'm a few plus years over 28, and that there are a few more wrinkles than there were when I was 30, or when I was 40, or when I was 50. And that doesn't make it a bad thing. It's just the fact that it's not necessarily what I thought it was. And so it's just kind of funny. Needless to say, I didn't post the pictures because I wasn't happy with them, and I've been looking on how you take better selfies. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, Haley, where are you? This morning, her and I were in the bathroom together, one of the women's restroom. I said, "Hey girl, let's take a selfie in the bathroom together." Let's do a bathroom selfie. But the thing about perspective is that it's really, the attitude of what we believe. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we have this interesting story here about this woman. We don't even know her name, so we're going to call her our woman. She's our woman today. And couple interesting facts about this story is that it's actually the longest recorded conversation between Jesus and someone in the Bible. A nameless woman in the conversation they had. A couple of the things is that we know from Scripture that it was high noon, that it was a hot day, and that Jesus was tired from traveling, and that he chose a sensible rest stop, Jacob's well outside of Sychar. And while waiting for his disciples to go into town for food, when this unnamed woman appeared with her clay jar in hand, and then Jesus made a simple request. We know he asked her, "Will you give me a drink?" Well, we also know that she was surprised for a few reasons. One, because he was Jewish and she was a Samaritan, and in their culture, Jews did not speak to Samaritans, so it kind of threw her a little bit that he asked her. I think she actually referred to it. She said, "Why would you ask a despised Samaritan?" So we know a little bit about her, that she might have been a little sarcastic. Some of the customs of that day were that not only did Jews not speak really to Samaritans, but also that they weren't allowed to address women without their husbands present. And thirdly, that rabbis really had no business speaking to shady women like our woman. But Jesus that day was willing to toss out the rules to have this conversation with her. But our woman, she got a little focused on the rules instead of the grace. it says that she remarked to Jesus about this. Because he replied, like in verse 10, it says, "If you only knew what a wonderful gift God has for you and who I am, then you would ask me for living water." We learned from their conversation that she did have some understanding of some religious beliefs or things that had been taught to her. So she felt somewhat comfortable discussing these things, especially with a stranger and someone that was not of her particular race. Also during this conversation, she tells us that she has had 5 husbands and currently isn't married to the man she's living with. So what we see here is that her perspective was focused on the law when Jesus's was focused on grace. It's an interesting thought when you think about that she kept pointing to the law and that he was pointing to grace. From her replies, an attempt to misdirect or to redirect the conversation, we can assume that our woman is coming from a place of what I think is just a painful life and maybe a place of mistrust. It doesn't necessarily tell us that, but you can kind of begin to assume that she's had a rough life. She's had 5 husbands. I've only had 1, and it's been tough. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't really tell us why she had 5 husbands, but most likely she was a widow. And in those days, widows had one of 3 choices. 1, they could become a beggar. 2, they could become a prostitute. Or 3, they could remarry. So I would assume of the choices that if she was a widow, that she chose to remarry. But it didn't seem like she had very good luck with husbands, huh? She must have outlived them. I think she might have had, maybe she had a reputation around town for being the black widow. I don't know. It doesn't really say, but we definitely know that she had had 5 husbands, and that it seems from her answers or her questions back to Jesus that she might have been coming from a place of mistrust. And mistrust has a way of really blurring our perspective. Because what happens is the person speaking to us could have good intentions and really coming from a right place, but we're coming from a place of being hurt. And so everything they say or we hear them say is being met with that perspective of, you're going to hurt me. And so we have to assume that's where she's coming from. And I don't know about you, but how many of you have ever been hurt by someone before? Honestly, I can say I've probably hurt people. How about someone ever been lied to or cheated on, or someone stole from you, or someone disappointed you? It happens, doesn't it? And it has a tendency to change our perspective of people's motives, of what people are saying, and the things that they want to do for us. So here we have this woman that we don't know at the exact time really what was going on in her life, but we do know a few things. One, she'd been married 5 times. We know that she was currently not married to the man she was living with. And we know that she was doing this daily chore of going to the well. And I think we can safely say this woman had had a tough life. And we can assume these things about her. And even in the act of having to go get water every day, look, we go and we pick up bottled waters. We go to our sink or we go to our purified water filters and we get our water every day. It's not really a chore. But in those days, it wasn't like they just went and got their plastic containers and went and filled up with water. They had clay jars. So not only was it a matter of it being heavy, but it was tedious and it was just time consuming. They had to walk to the well. And the well was not within the town. This is outside of her town, outside of her village, so she had to walk daily to go get water. And it doesn't even say how many times a day she had to go, because it was really hot. It might have been more than 1 trip a day, because I'm sure she could only carry 1 jar at a time. So this is not something, we don't read about her showing up singing and happy, or that she's with her friends and they're all laughing about, we're going to the well. It's really probably something she dreaded doing. I hate laundry. I can't imagine how I would have felt about going to the well every day. And maybe 2 or 3 times a day. So, it would be something that, you just had to do. And I'm sure she wasn't excited about going when she gets there. And she's met by a man. And she's met by this man that she doesn't know. And a man that starts to have a conversation with her. So she begins to respond to him with coming from this perspective of mistrust. And we also learn that she's not really a very good listener. She doesn't necessarily hear what Jesus is saying Because he says to her, if you only knew what a wonderful gift God has for you, and if you only knew who I am, that you would ask me for some living water. Instead, our woman chooses to point out the obvious. That's how we are. We like to point out the obvious things. Well, you don't have a rope. And I don't think that you have a jug. So I don't know how you're going to get this water. So, and that well is really deep. Because when Jesus said, look, I can give you living water, she's like, how are you going to do this? You have no jug, you have no rope, this well is deep. And he said, yes, but the water I have, you'll never thirst again. And so here she is again. Sometimes we don't really know when to stop talking as women. We have to get the last word in. And she's like, really? You're going to tell me that your water is better than the water of our father Jacob, who gave us this well, that he and his family enjoyed? So she's not even listening. She's hearing what she thinks that there's a motive behind what he's saying. And she's missing the whole gift of what he's trying to give her. In Psalms 46:10 it says, be still and know that I am God. There are times that we have to be still and listen. And I'll be honest, I'm not a very good person to be still. I don't really, if you ask my family, I'm not still that often. And I know sometimes Alan gets frustrated with me because he'll say, hey, let's talk about something. And I'll be like, okay, let's talk. And then I'll look over and I'll see something needs to be put away. And I'm like, keep talking, I'm listening. And all the time, I'm not. My heart is really not in the conversation because I'm too concerned about what's going on around me. And sometimes we need to be able just to stop and be still and listen to what God is saying in our lives. That's hard. It's hard to be still. But our woman's perspective, we see, has been blurred by reality. She was seeing the reasons why Jesus couldn't give her the water. What she didn't realize is that Jesus, he didn't show up that day to fix her problems. He was there to change her reality, her perspective, and to give her a new perspective about her life. Sometimes in life we come to God because we want him to fix our brokenness. We want him to fix our mess. But we want him to do it on our terms. And we want him to do it the way that we want him to do it. And, we come to him with these things and we give it to him like that. And when really God says, look, I'm not a genie in a bottle. You can't just take me off the shelf and rub me and say, okay, here's my wish number one. It's not the way it works. God is not here to fix our messes. But he's here to give us his perspective. Think about God's perspective. There's a movie, and I can't remember the name of it exactly right now, but it's a movie, and in the movie there's this conversation about perspective. And the guy was saying to the woman, he said, our perspective is so limited to where we are at. And he said, say for instance, we're standing here, and 2 blocks away there's a car accident. Can you see it? She's like, well, no, there's buildings in front of me and around me. He said, okay, let's climb to the highest building in the city and look down. Can you see the accident now? And she said, well, yes, because he said, you're standing at a different perspective. So think about where we live, that we live right here. And think about where God exists. And that his perspective is from beginning to end. Ours is in this moment and what's happened behind us. So, here Jesus has not come to fix her life. He's come to change her perspective and to give her this living water that is going to spring up within her like a perpetual spring that's going to continually fill her heart with his presence, and to give her a new perspective about her life, to give her hope, to give her joy, to give her peace. And instead, all she can see is the fact that why he can't give her these things. Matthew 6:26 says, look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. And are you not much more valuable than they are? God cares about the little things. And if he cares about those, how much more does he care about us? So our woman doesn't realize that her perspective about life is about to change. And she doesn't realize that the water that Jesus is offering her is not physical, but it's spiritual. Jesus said to her, he said, people continue to be thirsty after drinking the water from this well, but the water I give becomes a perpetual spring within their soul. Jesus used a life situation in her to speak to what was really going on and what he wanted to give her. You know, according to science, it says that humans need about 2.4 liters of water to survive every day. And it's either ingested through liquid, or through the liquid in our diet. And if we need physical water to survive, why would we need God to live? Well, in Genesis 2:7, it says that when the Lord God formed a man's body from the dust of the ground and breathed into it the breath of life, man became a living person. The very existence of who you are, who I am, is because of the breath of God. Not because of what I'm capable of doing, not because of my accomplishments, not because of what I can say or I can do. It's because of the breath of God. And without the breath of God, I cannot live. Look around the world. Do you think people are living to the fullest content of what they can? What they should be living? No. They're living way beyond, because they are missing the fact that God is what we need to live. That he is what we need to live. That it was his breath that gave us life. It's his breath that we need to breathe in every day to be who he's called us to be. Jesus knew her life, but he wanted to acknowledge the current state of what was going on. Because she really didn't get the point what was happening there, and he really didn't stop there. Our woman's perspective was if he would give her this water, then she would never have to come back to this well again. It's that little wish number one. Fix this so I never have to do this again. You know, let me win the lottery, Lord, so I don't have to work. You know, or, you know, God, just take care of this so I don't have to do this. We want God to fix things. We don't want him necessarily to change our perspective. But the presence of Jesus that day at the well wasn't there to fix her problems, but rather to give her a new way of seeing her life. Our woman wasn't hearing or seeing what Jesus was saying. So Jesus, to kind of get her to listen, he says, okay, hey, I want you to go and get your husband. Now he wants to her husband there. So she's like, all of a sudden, she's like, well, I'm not married. He goes, well, I know you're not. You've had 5 husbands. And the man you're currently with, you're not married to. You know, he's not telling her anything he didn't know. But he wanted her to stop and to listen and to acknowledge the true reality of what was her perspective and the mess of her life. You know, there's something about honesty. And, you know, as people, we have a hard time being honest sometimes. And I had a really fun breakfast the other day with Shraddha, and we talked a little bit about our journeys, and you know, it's funny, both of us within our life have both attended 12-step classes. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a 12-step class, but it's definitely about being truthful and about being honest. And the reason I was there was because Alan's sister had had some emotional issues in her life, and they had gone into family counseling. And the counselor had told them that she recommended that myself and his brother's wife, that we both start attending this 12-step class. So I was like, are you kidding me? Your family is so screwed up, and now I have to go? So I thought, okay, fine, it's 12 weeks, I can do this. I don't know if you've ever been to a 12-step meeting, but it's not a 12-week class. See, I'm all about checks off, you know, check it off. And so I get there, and maybe you've seen it on TV, but you always have to introduce yourself like, hi. And in a Christian 12-step, it's like, hi, my name is Michelle, and I'm a sinner. I wouldn't say it. I would say, hi, my name is Michelle, and I'm a sinner saved by grace. Because my husband's family was really screwed up. I didn't say that. That's what I was thinking. That was the tagline. You know, Jesus knew I was thinking it. But I would not say, Michelle, I'm a sinner. I would say, Michelle, I'm a sinner. And every time I'd say, saved by grace. It was funny because the counselor that they were doing counseling, she led this group. And I know in the back of her mind, she kept thinking, wait till truth hits you. I knew I mean, not like in a bad way, but she just probably kept thinking, really? You can't even say I'm a sinner? But I could not say it. I didn't want to say it. Because in my mind, it wasn't true. I wasn't a sinner. I was Michelle, and I was saved by grace. Which was true, but not in the manner that I thought it was. It was probably about 5 weeks into this program, for my 12 weeks, so I thought, that something then really happened in our life. It had nothing to do with what was going on with his family, it was something with us. And all of a sudden, everything in my world that I thought was so, my perspective was so good, it just came kind of crashing down. And it was just, you want to call my little bubble was burst. And I remember sitting in the church office with this counselor. And I don't know if you know necessarily the 12 steps, but the first three is, the first one is I can't. The second one is God can. And the third one is I think I'll let him. And those sound so simple, like I can't, God can, I think I'll let him. They're three of the hardest steps you can ever do. And I remember she looked at me and she said, Michelle, you've just gone from step 1 to step 3. Because all of a sudden, everything that I had put together, that I thought was my perspective of my life, was not real. And it felt very broken, and it felt very unrepairable. But it wasn't. But it wasn't something I could fix. It was something that God could fix, that I had to be willing to let him. But the key to it is the fact that there was honesty that had to come into my life. And the honesty was, I wasn't in that class because Alan's family was messed up. I was in that class because my family was messed up. And I remember when I came to that realization, I was like, wow. All along I've been saying, your family's really screwed up. Like, you know, you've come from a divorced home, you know, you've had these problems in your family, and now this with your sister, and it was like they were obvious things. But my things in my family, we did a beautiful job of disguising them behind that facade wall. But they were still very real. And so this time of honesty brought something into my life. And you know, the thing that it changed in me was the way that I began to worship. Because it really, it wasn't about being humbled. It was about being real. And it was about my perspective becoming God's perspective. He didn't say my life had to be perfect. He just said he wanted me to see it from his view. Jesus says that it's the knowledge of the truth is what sets us free. You know what? Jesus didn't say to her, go get your husband because he wanted to embarrass her. He wanted her to acknowledge the current state of her life. And to say for her to hear herself say, I've had 5 husbands, and the one I'm with now is not my husband. He wanted her to really see the current state of what her perspective of her life really was. Because that's the place where we have to get before God can do anything in our life. Her reply to him was, Sir, you must be a prophet. But watch this, and we're so good at this because the truth is hard, honesty is hard. So she does this great job of kind of, once again, deflecting the conversation away from truth. And she said, you know, why do Jews believe we should worship one place and Samaritans another? Isn't it great? She's just turning the conversation from, I've got 5 husbands, I'm living with one I'm not married to why do Jews worship here and we believe we should worship here? It's just totally turn the conversation like we'd like to do. We don't want to get into those tough conversations about our perspective. But here she's trying to change the subject and avoid the truth. But the truth is we have to see Jesus for ourselves. I can't see Jesus through Austin's eyes. I can't see Jesus through Jake's eyes. I have to see Jesus through him. I have to see him myself. And Jesus has to become a mirror for my life. And I found this great, his name's Zach Neese, and he is one of the pastors from Gateway Church, and he wrote this. He said, worship is like a mirror. It reflects your relationship with God. It doesn't matter whether you're worshiping in public or you're worshiping in private. How you worship is a crystal clear thermometer that accurately reflects the depth and the passion of your relationship with your Heavenly Father. And when you have an open and honest heart, you can approach the throne of God with boldness and total freedom. But Jesus brings our woman back to the conversation, and he says, look, a time is coming and has now come. Because she said to him, that there's a Messiah going to come, and he's going to make all this clear to us. And he says to her, the time has come. When true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers that the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. Say that with me. In spirit and in truth. If you don't believe it, say it again. In spirit and in truth. He was telling her the time has come because I am here. He was here. The Messiah that she believed would come and make things clear, he was right here in front of her, and he was making it clear. And the time has come for us. Look, it doesn't matter if when you worship, you close your eyes, you open your eyes, you put your hands up, you put your hands way up, you put your hands down, you pray. However you do it, whether you choose to do it in a church, in your car, in the Holy Temple, it doesn't matter where. What matters is the fact that we come to God with honest and truthful worship. And that is hard. That's hard because, I watch people when we come up for prayer. I think we want God to change things in our life. When we come and we ask him for things. But the problem is, and you've heard it said, that we have a tendency to take those things back with us because we don't want to let control go. It's hard. Control is something we hold on to with all of our might. But when you really come to God with that truth and that honesty, and you're really saying, God, I can't. God, you can. God, this is yours. This is yours. Just like that night when I sat in that room with that counselor, I said, God, I can't. But God, you can. And I'm going to let you do it. And that meant, whatever it meant for me, whatever it meant that I needed to work on, whatever I needed to do to allow him to change or to heal, to focus on in my life, I was willing to do it. Because at this point, I was ready to be honest. And I was really ready to come to him with that abandoned worship. When's the last time you've had a just truthful and honest worship with God? We sing these incredible songs about his presence and about what he can do, and I sincerely believe we mean it, but when's the last time you were really honest and just kind of abandoned your control? Just said, oh God, here I am. Here I am. So we see our woman met with the Messiah that she knew was going to make things clear. So what happens to our woman? Well, some incredible things happened in her life. She had an encounter that day with the Messiah. She had a Messiah that day with Christ. And he gave her that living water. And what'd she do with it? The Bible says that she ran off back to the village, leaving her jar behind. And she went and she told people, you've got to come and you've got to see the man who told me everything I've ever done. He didn't condemn me. He didn't say, go home and sin no more. He knew what I'd done. He knew the state of my life, but he still gave me. He loved me yet. He loved me still. He wasn't trying to fix my problems, but he gave me this perspective that he loves me. He loves me, and that he died for me, that he has given eternal life for me. That she had this new perspective of life, and that she went back and she told everyone she knew. This is a woman that probably didn't have a lot of friends in her life. She had what we would consider a shady reputation. But all of a sudden she caught the ears of those around her because she began to speak a new perspective. She began to speak with boldness and with truth and with honesty. And what happened? All of a sudden these people began to want to know what was going on. And they went and they found Jesus. And the Bible says in verse 39 that many from the Samaritan village believed that he was the Messiah because of the woman's report. What happens when God changes our perspective? We become honest and we become truthful. You know what? It's not about life being perfect. It's about accepting this living water that he's given us and realizing that we need him. People, we need him. We need him. If you've been going alone in this life alone without him, you need him. You need him. If things are not happening and you feel like things are falling apart, you need him. If things are going good, you need him. We need him. We need him every day of our life. He wants us to be in relationship with him. He wants our perspective to be his perspective. He doesn't want us fighting this battle alone. He doesn't want us just surviving life. He wants us to have this spring of life within us that is flowing from the throne of God. That's what I want. That's what I want in my life. I'm going to ask the worship team to come this morning. And ask Amanda to, that song was beautiful, the Living Water song, but I asked her to do the other song instead, because there's a part in that song that says, you know, my hands lifted high. You know, I believe that there's a sign of surrender, and all of us have watched movies long enough to know that when someone surrenders, what do? Put their hands up, don't they? They surrender. And I don't want you to do anything you don't feel comfortable doing this morning, but I'd really like to challenge you this morning to come to God with that honest worship. Just say, you know, God, I can't. God, here it is. Here it is. But God, you can. This morning, I'm going to let you. I'm going to let go. I'm just going to let go and see what happens. That's what our woman did. She let go. She let go of her choices and her mistakes and her perspective, and she said, I'm just going to take hold of your perspective because you see way above me. So let's stand this morning. And as we sing this song, I'm just going to ask that you just don't think about who's around you or like be concerned with who's in front of you, behind you, beside you. Just I want you to think about your perspective today. And can you come to God with that honest worship this morning? And if not, I really want to challenge you this morning to just let go. Just see